right, welcome everyone. I am happy to be part of our webinar series this month. It's actually June, just the start of summer, and hopefully the start of some deep dive time for folks as they work their way into thinking about the fall and strategic priorities and where your focus will be in 2022. And with that, it's a really great time to start thinking about your members and how you engage your members in their investment in your organization. So today I'm going to be joined by my colleague, Brooke Weldon. Brooke will be sharing with us her key findings over the years of development of membership scorecards, sponsorship scorecards, what that means as an investment to your organization, an investment to your members, and how to go about creating and implementing one. So Brooke and I have been working together for probably 7+ years here at Virtual. We have a great time together. Brooke is one of our innovative, creative personalities that just takes something and runs with it. And her and I have spent probably 6+ years developing scorecards. And I remember years and years ago, we started it. I started it with some folks at our company pre-Brooke. And I remember green circles and yellow circles and red circles to identify, hey, how's a company doing, a member, an organization within the association doing with its investment in a particular area of engagement or overall in the org. And since then, with Brooke coming on board and her data mindset and who she is and the people that we've been able to work with both internally and externally, this whole process has really grown over the last 6 years. So I'm excited to welcome Brooke today as our featured speaker and our guru of scorecards. So Brooke, say a hello and give us a little bit of detail about yourself.
Thank you, Shannon. As noted, my name is Brooke Weldon. I am a senior manager here with Virtual for just over 8 years now. And I jumped right in on ROI work early in my career, data diving, playing in Excel, ensuring efficiencies, and drafting processes for our corporate members and sponsors with many different associations that are in our portfolio.
Awesome. All right, well, let's dig in. Let's find out what we're going to dig into today. We're really going to take a hard look at how to go about creating a scorecard, why take the time to create a scorecard. We know that it can be daunting as we go through this. I think you'll feel a little bit like overwhelmed on how do you even get started, but we'll share some, best practices we'll implement in a phased approach. But more importantly, don't be overwhelmed and use this as an opportunity to learn from what we've done over the years. So why create that scorecard, how to go about implementing it, and then some best practices and key considerations as you both go through the process and what you learn after you get into the process. So let's go ahead and Brooke, let's take it away into where we're at and how we go about this.
All right. So really the purpose and advantage of why you should create a scorecard, also aligning that to your membership journey is a great way to understand that value. Now, I would caveat this with I would not focus on your scorecards for memberships of the individual type. This is really for corporate organizations or higher value memberships. Unless your data is very highly accessible for a platform, which we'll discuss later, you'll probably want to focus more on those higher value or corporate organizational memberships. And I'll also note that automation is great, but really the value of this scorecard is not to just automate, but really to find ways to achieve personalization, even when it's not really possible. And the scorecard really gives the ability to personalize conversations with those data, with data at your fingertips and prompting that engagement conversation. So using the membership journey, starting at awareness, really going through this scorecard process will help you identify the key benefits that you can promote in the marketplace and align those to your target audience. As you start to recruit members, the scorecard will also give you the opportunity to tailor your recruitment conversations with the prospect's needs. And we'll talk through how you can really use that as a tool through the sales cycle. Once they've become members, the engagement call, and this often happens. We hear it all the time. The most important time for engagement is the first 3 months after signing up. So we do a touch base 3 months into membership with a drafted scorecard, something that is early in their membership journey, and it shows those members where they've already jumped right in to utilize the benefits that they've purchased, or maybe where they haven't, and where they've got time. They've got, if it's an annual membership, they've got 9 more months to really make sure they utilize those benefits, and it serves as a great engagement push there. As you get towards the end of your membership term, again, if it's annual, oftentimes the decision maker may not understand or have insight into how their employees or sub accounts have utilized the benefits. They may not remember all the things that you talked about in your prospect call or your engagement call over the air, or they may have also changed positions, changed roles, and you are having to re-educate a decision maker. So the insights into all that engagement activity shows the ROI and shows the value of renewal to help make that sale again year over year. It also does show, and this is where being transparent and really understanding your benefits and having a conversation happens, because it does show missed opportunities as well. And there may be gaps in your scorecard for a particular member that they didn't take advantage of, and that's okay. It's great to point those out and remind them, and use it as a jumping off point for how they should engage in those areas in the next renewal term. Now, in the reinstatement side, of course, as I mentioned, if a primary decision maker has changed hands, and you don't get the chance to resell, and maybe you're trying to resell at a later date, you've got all this historical information in your ROI scorecard to show how they engaged in the past, maybe the reasons for cancellation, and that data really helps to foster that conversation with potential new decision makers. So it should really become part of every element in your membership journey.
So, Brooke, before we move on, I think you've touched on I think there's a couple of aspects I heard, and that's the personalization. One thing that I know we talk about a lot is, we want to be efficient. We want to create ways in which we can get messages out to members that are automated and that reduce some staff time. But talk a little bit about how associations and staff members can think a little bit outside of not what the association can provide for them, but what are the members' needs, right? And how can this scorecard really take a personalized approach to the member and their needs versus what the association offers, and try and relay that into, oh, here's how we can support you.
Yeah, as we get into how you set up your scorecard, one thing I'll also mention is make sure that you really understand what your members do need. Make sure that what is on your scorecard is what members actually perceive is valuable. I like to incorporate not only the traditional monetary value of you're paying an X amount in dues and you've got an X amount dollar in benefits back. That's one way to look at it, but we really like to add on another layer of engagement scoring, and that allows for flexibility in perception of value. So really creating like a table of what is the highest reason that you joined this organization, and allowing each member even to to choose their own kind of points structure, and comparing then their points with others. So, for example, in some cases, you may join an organization to become part of a board of directors, and there may or may not be a dollar value that really aligns with what they're paying. However, the relationships or the connections or the impact to the industry that they have is really providing that ROI back. Another great example is leadership development for larger organizations that are trying to cultivate their mid to junior level staff. Opportunities like becoming a chapter leader or becoming part of a task force. They may or may not provide intrinsic dollar value, but will provide soft skills even to their staff. And really aligning that with when you go into the recruitment conversations, knowing what the reasons are that an organization would join your association will help you really come back to that later during the renewal time and engagement conversations as well.
Great. All right, you ready to dive in?
Let's dive in.
All right, here we go.
The first thing you really must do to prepare for your scorecard adventure is start by compiling your list of benefits. You might already have a matrix in your prospectus, and that's a great place to start. But don't just copy and paste that matrix over. Use this to ensure you've really listed everything. Even consider surveying your members for what they consider to be beneficial, a reason for joining, and use that to compile your list of benefits. Think about the things that you may or may not list in your prospectus that because they may be work. For example, as I mentioned, they may become the opportunity of a member may be to participate in a committee or a task force or lead a committee or task force. Put things like that on there as well. Don't forget to add the traditional marketing benefits like logo shares or posting blogs on your site. Really think about every benefit that a member can engage in with your organization. Now, once you've compiled that list, start to think about the monetary and engagement values you want to apply. The monetary value can sometimes be determined based on the cost of what it is for a non-member, for example, to attend versus a member. So, for example, the discount between, let's say, an annual conference. A member rate may be $100 and a non-member rate might be $500. So there is built-in value there of the $400 difference. Also think about perhaps the perceived value of something that may not be sold. There are white papers available or educational elements available, and you may keep those behind the gate. It may not be sold to numbers. So determining a value for your items is also another way to add a ROI monetary value there. And that's also something you should publish online, value of $2,500 for this particular document. If you were a member, you would have access to it. So that goes back to even the awareness part of your journey of how to tie all this together. Now, the engagement score can vary much more by association and even more so by each organization within there, as I was talking about. This is a perception of value and the benefit of interacting with your association. I like to create a grid and determine what is the number one reason you join, what is the secondary reason you join, what is maybe nice to have as well, and creating a point structure, 25 points, 10 points, 5 points. You may want to keep it all within a 1 point scale. However, come up with a standard there and allow some flexibility. And this is also, again, where if you had gone through to survey your members about what they consider a beneficial reason for joining, you can use that to foster the creation of your engagement scoring values. Now, data discovery and organization is likely where you'll spend a good amount of your time. It is very important to know how the data is being collected, where the data lives. Is it living there forever, or does it need to move to some other reporting situation? Um, and then also how to access it. Even further, with how to access it, can you break it out by that member or company that you're trying to create a scorecard for? So this is where you'll spend some time on the processes of not only where everything lives now, but how are you going to collect it also in the future? And this needs to become part of the conversation whenever new benefits are added as well. The next prep step you'll have to do is to populate your template and create that process for collection. This is where you'll take your compiled list of benefits and you'll walk through how would we gather this for XYZ company from each benefit point. Sometimes things can't be collected. At some points, it may be impossible because there is just no way or form of data collection there. And sometimes I still say incorporate that onto your ROI scorecard, but leave it up to the company to determine if they've engaged with that, and put a disclaimer on there saying you better than I kind of thing. After you've gone through your preparation steps, the next is to implement your ROI scorecard. Once you have your template ready, I suggest you take that template and get a couple key corporate members or sponsors to test it out with, and stress test your template. See if you have been able to hit a good ROI with some of those key members or sponsors. And in addition to that, also create some scenarios for target prospects. Something that perhaps you have both vendors and practitioners in your prospect reach. Think about how the scorecard may look a little different for each of them, and create those scenarios again to ensure that you are achieving a maximum ROI by what you think those organizations may participate in. Once you have your template pretty well stress tested, with your current members and your prospective members, create your schedule. This is the touch points that you'll have, and you probably, hopefully, already have a touch points and renewal schedule. Determine how you're going to incorporate the scorecard with that. I use sort of the rule of three in the wrong way, the rule of 3 months, I call it, where 3 months into membership is your engagement touch point. And that's where you're drafting your first time version of a scorecard for a brand new corporate member or sponsor. That is used to have a conversation again early on in their membership journey, to keep them on the right path and ensure that they are aware of the benefits they've already jumped in on in the first 3 months, and what ones they should really plan for the next 9 months. The renewal schedule, again, that rule of 3 months, 3 months prior to renewal. So if you have an annual membership, you're pulling this at 9 months into their membership. This is another great way to not only show the decision maker the benefits that have been utilized, but also still allowing some time. There's still 3 more months left potentially on their membership, where they could still jump in and engage and increase that ROI even before the renewal time comes. Sometimes there are benefits that have that don't roll over, that have a maximum number each year, and so that's a great way to ensure that you are being communicative and transparent on benefits that they should be engaging in before it comes to that renewal period. Now, as we move into the review process, hopefully by now you've been able to test this with a few members, and you've implemented the process across your organization and have an annual programming going on. I cannot stress enough how important the review process is. This is when you've got to review the engagement, review the ROI across the organizations. If you have 50 corporate members, they each have a scorecard, and compiling all of that can really provide some data back to the board of directors or a membership committee or otherwise to ensure that you're providing the value, and to have a better understanding of what members are engaging in. So use that, learn from your members' engagement, or more importantly, or equally as important, the lack thereof in engagement. And pivot your benefits, and perceive value as necessary. Pivot to walk away from things. It's always so easy to provide a large list of benefits, but if folks aren't using it, there is a waste of resources in continuing to serve. Um, Same with the perceived value. If you see a benefit is highly utilized, but previously you had it as a nice to have engagement score, you may think about how that is actually more of a primary reason to join the organization. Now let's come up to some best practices, some key considerations as you go through this process as well. I did mention that you would likely spend a good amount of time in your data discovery and organization. Ideally, a central database, central source is your goal. This may or may not be possible. I work with plenty of organizations that have data in multiple systems, and I'm sure many who are listening to this are nodding their head. Um, Incorporating that process so you don't come to an moment when you're ready to report out. You really don't want to create a new benefit, have a webinar, and then have your data inaccessible to report on. So think about that as you go through in any new benefits, as you go through before you even start to fill out a scorecard. Think about where the data lives, how long it lives there, and if it should live somewhere else, think about how you transition that as well. Now, benefits access, I really think this is a key part of the scorecard that often gets overlooked. Uh, this is you're providing a decision maker with essentially the report out of what has occurred. But as we use this scorecard in the recruitment or the engagement side as well, the next thing that someone's going to think about is, well, how do I access this? I want to post a blog on the site. Like, how do I go about doing that? I like to incorporate a link or a descriptor right in the scorecard for how to access the benefit right then and there. That's going to be the jumping off point to ensure that engagement. So link out to your forums or web pages of how to access benefits. Incorporate perhaps discount codes if you need them right in your scorecard. So it's a really useful tool. Now, we talked about this a few slides ago. Personalization, I think, is really the underlying value add of an ROI scorecard across the board. Make sure you do your homework and be ready to be in the conversation with that data that you've equipped yourself and the member with. Get buy-in from the stakeholders on the goals for their involvement and utilize that information to have a fruitful conversation. Be transparent and don't be afraid of when there have been a scorecard is lower or there are gaps within the scorecard on benefits. Use that as fodder to encourage that conversation and plan for the next year looking forward rather than just looking back. And lastly, I'll touch base on benchmarking. I do also think this goes to the review cycle quite a bit. Thinking about it as usage by company type, again, vendor versus practitioner, et cetera, or by membership level. You may have different membership levels that come with a different quantity of benefits. After you've collected some data over time, at least probably 6 months to a year, you'll want to go through the cycle of this. Make sure you come back and you do some benchmarks with your members. I also, in the past, have shared that benchmarking data on the scorecards, as we've been doing this for for so many years now. There is so much data, and it is really nice actually to be able to share back with a corporate member that here's what the folks are who are in your same membership level are doing. Here are their scorecard averages. That helps a company understand, are we doing good against the next guy? Are we doing as good as our competitors in our involvement with this organization? And then use that benchmarking data as well, as I mentioned, to the board of directors, to a committee. Keep in mind as well, it's an ever evolving process and template. Take the compiled insights and continue to evolve your membership value and journey.
Great, Brooke. Lots of insights, lots of information. Can you give us a real world challenge and a real world success that you've seen over the years from any aspect, and that really kind of hits home on, after all this, the time it takes, right? We know this takes our team time, right? We don't do this in a bubble. We have several people that help us with the scorecards and get the data compiled, right? There's a review process, the client's involved. So it's not something that we take lightly, but talk about a real world challenge that you've had in a real world success story, and why you believe wholeheartedly that the time and the investment of staff is really paying off at the end of the day.
Sure. We've rolled this out now with several clients. I would say one of the greatest successes of rolling this out that I've seen over and over again, actually, with these organizations, is also in that recruitment side. When you're able to have a recruitment conversation, often you're throwing over a prospectus and you're having a very open conversation. When you're able to do that and have a calculator essentially right in front of you, plugging it in and adding up that value to show there is no reason why you should not join. You will get more for your dollar than by not joining. That has happened over and over again, and it really is, I think, one of the best successes of a scorecard. Now, on the flip side of that, the renewal side, there can be challenges. I have seen scorecards that come up with 20% on them, and when your client or your association averages 100 to 1,000% for a lot of its members, when you see a low 20% or anything under 100, you might cringe a little. There are times where you may or may not want to show a scorecard, and that's okay. The challenge is in how you then have the conversation. But the success is that you are equipped with that information before you get into a renewal conversation.
Awesome. And I know sometimes, Brooke, at that, if we do have those really low scorecards, we do tend to structure the conversation a bit differently. We may not show the scorecard, right? It's that opportunity for what you said at the beginning. Where's that conversation and personalization? How do we use this as an opportunity to talk about how this particular member could use the benefits and move forward? So it's not always that you show the scorecard. It really becomes personal, and that you know who that member is, and you know what will be of value for that conversation. Brooke, thanks so much for sharing all of your insights, your challenges, your successes, and the real nitty gritty of the how to's. I know this can be daunting for folks. I know it can be overwhelming. Where do I get the data? How do I even start the Excel spreadsheet? What's that Excel spreadsheet even look like? Brooke has spent a lot of time creating that Excel spreadsheet and honing it over the years, and we're very willing to share that with you. And I think even take it one step deeper, which is to have a working session with folks who really want to dig in and have Brooke on the line, and everybody bring their template, bring their questions, bring their scorecard, and she'll have a session where she walks through some of the finer details of what we talked about today. So if you're interested in that template, if you're interested in a working session, shoot us an email, shoot Brooke an email at bweldon@virtualinc.com. She'll be happy to set that up and make sure that you're set up for success as you take this journey for your association.
Thank you, Shannon. Well, it may be many years of work, but for me, it's just playing in Excel and really enjoying it. So I'm very much interested in the many dynamics and challenges that you may all face as you start thinking about your scorecards, and happy to help in any way we can.
Awesome. And just a reminder that Virtual has a knowledge hub online. You can find many resources there, similar to today's conversation. So when you have a chance, check that out. And don't hesitate, once again, to reach out if you're in that world of, I want to do this and I'm ready, but I need a little bit more help. We're happy to help and organize a working session. So again, thanks to Brooke and thanks to the rest of our team who make the scorecards possible. This is not a one-man show, and we appreciate all their support as well. So have a good day, everyone, and enjoy the summer of 2021 much differently than what we've seen in the past.
Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, everyone, for attending today.